I'm Philip Mayotte. I'm the director of the St. Boniface Museum located here in Winnipeg, in the heart of Old St. Boniface, the former city now associated or affiliated with the city of Winnipeg. The St. Boniface Museum is housed in Winnipeg's oldest building, the former convent of the Grey Nuns. The Sisters of Charity of Montreal is actually their official name. In 1844, 4 of these nuns volunteered for what became a 59-day trip by fur trade canoe from Montreal to the Red River settlement in order to assist in the areas of healthcare, education, looking after the poor, and all sorts of other what we consider today social services. They lived in this building until the mid-1950s, and in 1967 it first opened its doors as a museum interpreting French, Canadian, and Métis heritage culture here in Manitoba and in Western Canada. So in this section here, we're essentially interpreting what life would have been like for the Grey Nuns when they first moved into this building. Very simple, hard life and so on, but this building was built specifically for them. And again, the building itself served as a hospital, an orphanage, a senior citizens home, a day school, boarding school, and during the 1950 flood, it even served as a nursing college for the students who were studying at the St. Boniface General Hospital, which was operated by the Grey Nuns. The St. Boniface Museum is extremely proud of its display dealing with Louis Riel. Louis Riel is probably the most controversial and most written about figure in Canadian history. He's regarded as the founder of Manitoba when he organized the Métis to resist a premature assumption of Canadian authority over the West. And he is now celebrated in Manitoba as a hero, complete with a February holiday. And yet 15 years later, after what he did and accomplished in Manitoba, he was hanged as a traitor by the federal government, who in their mind saw him as having twice led the Métis in rebellion against the authority of Her Majesty the Queen in Canada. Included in our Louis Riel displays are a number of really one-of-a-kind items, such as the steamer trunk that he used as a child when he went off to Montreal at the age of 14 to study to become a priest. Of course, he never did finish those studies, but this is Riel's steamer trunk. We also have here the coffin in which his body was placed immediately after his execution. We also have the hood that was placed over his face when he was executed, as well as a small statue of Saint Joseph, the patron saint of the Métis, that belonged to Riel, and the statue has no head. And there's actually 3 and 4 different stories as to how the statue actually lost its head. We have a full-size representation of a Red River cart, the principal means of land transportation on the Canadian prairies prior to the arrival of the railway, and we've recreated a tableau vivant display essentially representing a Métis hunter's camp. Our blacksmith shop, and we've got a weaving and a loom display as well to give an idea how people would have earned their living back in the old time. And what I like to point out to people is the blacksmith was essentially the original recycler, because most of the time he wasn't making things, he was simply transforming them from one tool to another tool. Perhaps one of the most remembered artifacts we have here at the St. Boniface Museum is the mousetrap. This thing goes back to 1865 or so, and the way it works is fairly simple. You put water in this section here, you close it up. When the mouse steps through the front door, it moves this little plate out of the way, which would allow the door to close. The mouse is now stuck inside and has no place to go but to crawl up this little chamber here, which is wire. There's another flap that moves out of the way once the mouse goes by. It is now stuck at the top. All it can do is crawl through a little hole right at the top of the trap. It walks out onto a little platform on the other side. The platform falls, mouse slides into the water and drowns. Now the punchline for all this is the platform's connected to this wire, connected to this wire, connected to the door, so it essentially resets itself for the next mouse to come along. So in this area here, what we've done is we've reconstructed what we call our pioneer kitchen or our pioneer home. It's a mixture of French-Canadian furniture brought in from the St. Lawrence Valley, other bits that were made by early settlers, French-Canadian settlers in this area, as well as some pieces of furniture that were made by Métis in the 1860s, 1870s, and so on. Here we're now in our living room parlor area where we try and give an idea of how a reasonably well-off or a bourgeois family might have lived. Not necessarily, you know, super rich, but somebody who lived in an urban environment, you know, 1910, 1920. You know, a lot of sort of nice sets of dishes, nice furniture. Here we've got the old cylinder type phonograph, you know, an actual Thomas Edison cylinder phonograph. And a lot of people are quite impressed by the square grand piano. And this clock over here is probably about 110 years old now, and it still works. This is the first pump organ made in Western Canada. Of particular interest is that statue above the altar of the Blessed Mother. That statue was hand molded by one of the nuns here in 1848, and it is made out of papier-mâché, flour, water, and old newspapers. And the other thing that visitors tell me that makes me quite happy is they walk in here and they get this sense that, you know, they say to me, I feel like I'm in a museum. I feel like I'm actually walking in history. And they actually are, because when you walk in this building, the way the floors squeak and when you look at the walls and so on and so forth, you know you are in a building that's well over 160 years old.